Deeper and deeper I go. I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors, and welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self-discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents, Did the Pope God Really End the Circle Church and Chancery's Privateering? But before he begins, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, just a word for this particular show, we are experiencing technical difficulties with our video. So you are not going to see, but you will hear our National Grand Sheik presenting Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, Vadimekum, Shalom, Assalamu Alaikum. Greetings, everyone. And we're going to talk tonight about the ongoing conditions, but for the most part, to get a feel of where the people in general are in relationship to both the realities of the social, economic, and political venues operating here at Midgard, Earth, and its effect on the people, and a general feel for the state of affairs with the people, many of whom are beginning to become aware of the fictional matrix that has been perpetrated against humanity at large for these last few centuries, and exacerbated and accelerated as of late. Now, for those of you, many of you who know jurisprudence and world history are aware of the privateering operations under the Unum Sanctum Bulla issued and the Doctrine of Discovery issued by the popes of Rome against the Asiatic Africans of the planet. And those same policies are now affecting the middle class as well as the lower class of hybrid Europeans around the world in Europe and at North America and Canada, etc. And because many of the hybrid Europeans are now starting to share with you information that we have been telling you for 50 years, more people are becoming more aware because they have controlled the media system through the different corporate entity operators of the United States Corporation. Now, taken into consideration, this is important, and in certain areas here, I would share with you to please take notes. I want you all, as a starter, to pull up and do your research on the convention on the prevention and the crime of genocide, etc. We're going to be going through that because you're going to use this as a measure in your affairs. as well as correcting a lot of your concepts in relationship to your call and response activities dealing with persons under the de facto United States corporate government that include all of the corporate state operatives and the subdivisional franchised agencies, all of whom have been operating under the practice of profiteering. And so, for many of the people who are not aware, I'm going to read from the dictionary privateer and profiteering, because the people most are not aware that that's how the institutions and all of your agencies have been operating. Meaning that, so I want to make this very clear. The general public has a perception in their minds and in their everyday activities of how they view agencies. As an example, like what they would call federal agency like HUD or FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, or CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, IRS, Inquisition Revenue Service, also known as the Internal Revenue Service. All of these agencies or subdivisional agencies, the people have been under the concept that these are separate or individual or constitutionally regulated agencies for the good of the people. Fact is, all of them belong to the crown. Now, when you say crown, it must be also understood that the crown is the collective members of the Bar Association, the British Accredited Registry, operating at London, City of London, which is a corporate entity distinguished from London City. People need to understand, City of London is not London City. The operations are Fleet Street, England. The major hub is the Circle Church and Chancery. Whenever they're taking or gathering resources in lands and among people that they have conquered, and this is particularly in North America and Canada. Like, say, for instance, if people who have sharecropping agreements that are covered with what they call mortgages and deeds, they're really sharecropping agreements. And when they take them back under the feudal law operations of tenancy, etc., under the rule of abandonment, comprehend the reality that the people never owned any of these properties under mortgages and deeds. Anyone that has a mortgage and deed under the United States corporation company that has been perpetrated as a country, all the property is really converted to the United States Corporation Company through their agencies, answering to the states of, who answer to the corporate state, who answer to the United States, i.e., then to the Seven Hills Crown, which is Washington, D.C., and they answer to London, to the City of London, to the Crown Bar, and they answer to the Crown of Buckingham, and they answer to the Jesuit order and the Bishopric of Rome, the Vatican. That is your major trinity. When the people have been told about the Trinity in the name of so-called church operations, their idea of Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost is for the public. The reality of it is that it's the Vatican, City of London, Washington, D.C. Those are the only acknowledged sovereign territorial political places on the planet by virtue of the unum sanctum operations of the Pope of Rome, i.e., the claim of owning both the body and the souls of the people. This is the reason why you see the United States Corporation Company militarized, also referred to by Dwight D. Eisenhower as the Congressional industrial military complex. That's essentially the operative, one of your major hub operatives for all your subdivisional agencies that actually are the military operations of the Jesuit order on behalf of the field operatives of the Crown, which is the bar association among the people for the Vatican. And so as we're having this conversation, and our last conversations that we've been having over the years, I'm bringing this up because we want to have you in the right frame of mind as to where we're coming from when we're saying different things that people may be less familiar with, or that they may assume are mere opinion. What we're talking about are things that are based in the real world politics that the general public is not aware of, which is again why a lot of people I'm cognizant of over the years have not really in many ways understood the Moorish Divine and National Movement, or who have mistaken it. But also when you see a lot of people get confused with their questions about the Moorish movement, what Noble Drawley did, etc., and then you'll see different so-called groups or people that have come through the movement, and you'll see them so-called clash by virtue of action and opinion, because it must be known to you that the Moorish Divine and National Movement is the major contemporary in modern times order that was really established to counter the unum sanctum operations of the popes of Rome against the Asiatic Africans of the planet, i.e. the Inquisition wars against the Moors, and then covered up with the Christian Black Codes, the operations. All of these operations are connected. They changed the name and titles for the same operations from generation to generation so that people cannot follow and recognize to dismantle the web. Just like you see on their private voucher, private commercial paper, dollar bill, if you pay attention to the corners, to the corner numbers, you'll see a spider's web that's in the graphics. What that represents is the Black Widow. And the issue, yes, and what it deals with is their policy of catching humanity in the web of ignorance, in the web of false matrix, devouring them, and then dropping the carcass. This is why many people who do not really comprehend what's going on think that they've been paid when they get the dollar bill, which is an oxymoron. A dollar comes from Yakimthaler, which means gold coin. That's what it means. Dollar comes from Yakimthaler, which means gold coin, physical gold coin. Are we clear? So and now a bill implies a debt or a lien. So dollar bill, the phrase dollar bill is an oxymoron. Keep that in mind. Also, the instrument of the paper coming under the category of fiat issued being private commercial paper of the Jesuit belonging to the Pope of Rome. So people must comprehend and understand, overstand, and understand that the Federal Reserve and the Board of Directors are directly tied to the members of the Circle Church and Chancery, which comprise members of the Senate and the Congress operating for the United States Corporation Company. This is why they never fix any problems for the people. Their job is to keep the people deceived, and under the guise of governing and serving them are really infiltrators into the affairs of the people, and they legislate under color of authority, the color of legislation, that the extractions from the common people can be made under the guise of law, with the common people not suspecting that the Congress and the senators are actually board of directors for the United States Corporation Company that's actually run from Davos, Switzerland, and registered in Austria. This is why a lot of times when we're talking jurisprudence to the people, a lot of people mistake or misjudge some of the things that we're saying and thinking that we are maybe against the people, not knowing that we're talking for the people and against the fraud of the misrepresented corporation belonging to the crown, represented as the United States, that the people have been trained, particularly since 1871, they've been trained that it is a country. It is a private corporation owned by the crown and the Vatican. That's a fact.
Interjection. So how do the alleged or the so-called 13 bloodline families tie into the three? You got London, you got the
They're in the background. They're in the background. In other words, you have a hierarchy, and the 13 bloodline families will be presented as to the people in reconstructed history as the 13 colonies. They're really the 13 colonists.
Okay.
This is why it's difficult for people to really comprehend that when they start doing study. As an example, like say when some of our people are in the quest for liberating the Asiatics of the North, they tagged us as Indian tribes. That's to cover up the history of the Phoenician and Bantu and Mandinka tribes that been here for millennia. We've been here for millennia, not a couple of thousand, for millennia. This was before the great Atlantis became an ocean. It was once a river. And those of us, when they had the great Superdivere, that's referred to in the Septuaginta, in the old Coptic text, which becomes later the Bible, and they talk about the dividing of the land between Ham and Cush. What they're talking about is the great Superdivere, when the Asiatics of ancient Amexem, which is now called Kemet in Africa, etc., crossed the river on this side, and then the term come about of the Ibri, which means the Ibri crossed the river. The Ibri is misrepresented as Hebrew. And so those of us of the family that come to this side of the water are called Hebrew. But that is an action and not an identity that has been, and it's also not a religion.
You got people out here on street corners arguing that
they're arguing they're right in one way because they are the Aboriginal people of the land
that crossed the river.
Yes, Ibri means those who crossed over. That's what it means, and it's Ibri. Now, the Ibri is dialectically corrupted as Hebrew, so keep that in perspective. Now, also comprehend. So we're talking root politics, or the root of the so-called Christian crusades against the Asiatics. Because you must know that the Christian crusades are really the Constantinian crusades against the real Christians, who are the Coptics, who are actually Sabian Moors, or they'll say Sabian Moors, also short A and long A. Some people will pronounce it long A, some people will pronounce it short A, and this is where you get the term Saba. And then that history is covered up with the word Jew. So the people of the Western Hemisphere that they hide behind pejorative terms like melanated people and the Indians and the Negroes, slaves, all this term, are really the true Sabians, and covered up as the so-called real Jews. That's where that complex of that continued argument, as the people are waking up, has its origin, even though they're not clear. But what I've just shared with you is certain real facts that in the quest of the people trying to find their identity or who they are or what's really going on, I just gave you some keys that you can research for yourself, and then we can start discarding the false representations and get closer to the truth and come out of this sleepy matrix we're in.
So has any other group of people been so misrepresented, mislabeled, misnomered? I mean, given so many layers of identity that you can't find.
That's the burial.
Truth.
Now, the metaphor for the burial is the burial of the brother in a hole with the coat of many colors. Yusuf.
Yeah, Yusuf. Okay.
See, this is again why it's so important. Even as you know yourself, Dr. G, as you have degrees in holy book studies, and of course, as you woke up, you become more adept in the same books that actually caused you to turn away from the institutions that have misused the books.
Absolutely.
Because you have a greater understanding and a greater comprehension of their origin and their true meanings and the metaphoric basis, and therefore your concepts change. This is why a lot of people, when they're actually doing research, you'll find that most people that actually start doing research end up leaving the institutions by which these books were presented to them. Isn't that interesting? You notice that a lot of people, whether they go to church, mosque, synagogue, temples, all these different orders that are put in place in the name of bringing the people to spiritual development, that many of the people who really do scholarly research end up leaving the institutions because they're schools. And their system. Some of them are schools for real development. Some of them are there for social solace systems. And that must be comprehended. It's not condemning them. They serve their purpose.
Can you explain what a social solace system is? I know.
Social solace systems, they're called the 3 S's. Now, among scholars, your so-called organized religious orders are called social solace systems. They're put in place for people who lack knowledge, and as a substitute for knowledge, they adopt belief systems and dogma systems. Doesn't mean that they're bad, doesn't mean that they're wrong, mean they don't have tools of knowledge by which to liberate themselves or to make distinction in the mental and the physical or the aggregate and the ethereal world, or even with the philosophies. So they're actually given social solace systems, which are actually grade school systems that gives people comfort who get confused with life and they're seeking answers, but they don't come to any real rational or logical conclusions. This is why you'll see the mantra always promoted: don't question the word of God, but yet you're supposed to know about God type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you question, they tell you shut up, or you ain't ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually the priests who do it. But the people don't know that the priesthood are the one that set up the social solace systems so that they could prey upon the unknowing. But their prayers are P-R-A or P-R-E-Y. And for the sheep, they are the prey, P-R-A-Y. So you have the hominin, and this has been going on. This is where you have the regular operative of among the people who come out of the false matrix, whether you see prophets, men and women over the years and over the decades and over the centuries who become awake to the fraud of the dogma system set up by the priesthood, the social solace systems, and they speak up, and then the priesthood always sacrifice them.
Well, the solace systems give people comfort and give them something to hope for and hope in as a distraction for them seeking.
That's why they call
truth.
it solace.
Right.
So you know how like you comfort someone who's grieving for a loss of of a loved one
Of course.
or loss of property. Just like you'll see, like we'll look over the country right now, right? One of the things that's prominent right now is particularly in North America and in Canada area, right? And it's spreading, is a horrible multi-tiered designed opioid and drug system that actually turns the people almost into zombies, where they're talking about fentanyl, and there's a few other names they have for a few others that are literally destroying people. And usually when people go there, there's usually no return, meaning that most persons or people who start using those levels of opioids, what they become is usually what they are until they die. And of course, the quality of life is gone. Family's totally dead, right? That's out of the box already, but their chances of having any recovery or quality of life is already dead. This is done. Now that's solace from the political end of the unum sanctum operations. Are we clear? So both of those are solace systems, but the mission is the genociding of the people. But by the people being locked into the social solace systems, they're seeking divine comfort with the creator or the source, or what you say, Allah, Yahweh, etc., different names they have given the creator or the source. And they usually fail, not knowing that the demon club ship is usually locked in all of your solar systems, i.e. organized religions, are controlled by the very demons that they're seeking to so-called conquer. The history of this is why, again, like as an example, when people start talking about Christianity as an example, and they'll say, well, we're Christians trying to do a good life. Now, in general, you're talking all the general religions in the nature of, right? But yet most people aren't aware that the official name of Christianity, as it's been presented to the modern world, is really the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed, and it belongs to Constantine, Roman ruler. And these people have actually been worshiping Rome and paying Rome taxes in the name of 10% tithing all these decades, thinking that they're worshiping the code word Jesus, when the letter J was never used in language until the 1700s, and it's actually a cover-up for Yeshua. And Yeshua is Yeshua ben Yosef, the one they call Jesus, the one who achieved the Christ degree, which comes from Krishna, which means the burnt one, or the activation of the pineal gland. It's actually the body. So the body of Christ is actually a metaphor for actually the spiritual development of the consciousness of the monad in the body form that we call the avatar of the body, and the body and the spirit. That collective body of consciousness and spirituality is called the Christ, or the activation of all your glandular systems. That's a fact. Now, of course, when you study the origin of the scripts back from the Bible to the Septuaginta, from which it was derived, back to that, to the book of the opening of the mouth, etc., or the that they refer to sometimes as the Book of the Dead from ancient Hittite, that they call Egypt, etc., and your older script, etc., that's dealing with actually the development of the body. And so the Christ is more of a metaphor of the collective of humanity in the avatar form, being able to separate the wheat from the chaff, or the cognizance or the awakening of knowing that you are spirit, if using the avatar of the flesh. And it's a school. To help some people along, I would like to share chapter 3 of the Circle 7 Holy Quran of the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, Circle 7, Chapter 3, Elihu's Lessons, the Unity of Life. Again, Elihu met his pupils in the sacred grove and said, "No man lives unto himself, for every living thing is bound by cords to every other living thing. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will love and not demand love in return. They will not do to other men what they would not have other men do unto them. There are two selves, the higher and the lower self. The higher self is human spirit, clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. The lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah and man and will not pass away. The higher self is the embodiment of truth. The lower self is truth reversed, and so is falsehood manifest. The higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is mother of the virtues and the harmonies of life. The lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest, misery, and death. It gives men apples that are lovely to the eye and pleasant to the smell. Their cores are full of bitterness and gall. If you would ask me what to study, I would say yourselves. And when you would have well studied them, and then would ask me what to study next, I would reply, yourselves. He who knows well his lower self knows the illusions of the world, knows of the things that pass away. And he who knows the higher self knows Allah, knows well the things that cannot pass away. Thrice blessed is the man who has made purity and love his very own. He has been ransomed from the perils of the lower self and is himself his higher self. Men seek salvation from an evil that they deem a living monster of the netherworld, and they have gods that are but demons in disguise, all powerful yet full of jealousy and hate and lust, whose favors must be bought with costly sacrifice of fruits and of the lives of birds and animals and humankind. And yet these gods possess no ears to hear, no eyes to see, no heart to sympathize, no power to save. This evil is a myth. These gods are made of air, clothed with shadows of a thought. The only devil from which man must be redeemed is self, the lower self. If man would find his devil, he must look within. His name is self. If man would find his savior, he must look within. And when the demon self has been dethroned, the savior love will be exalted to the throne of power. The David of the light is purity, who slays the strong Goliath of the dark and seats the savior love upon the throne. That's the divine instructions from the Holy Prophet, chapter 3, Elihu's lessons, the unity of life.
Which makes a lot of sense when you read the whole chapter in context, as opposed to a lot of times we'll tell people study, and when you have study yourself. But when you read the whole chapter, it puts it in context more for those who may have not read chapter 3.
Yes.
To now see, which is the same thing that happens in biblical interpretation. Somebody pulls something out of the middle and just uses that. But if you don't know the context, then you have all you're going in.
Exactly. And this is where people have been cheated relative to what the priesthood have done when they translated Septuaginta into the Bible, and then did all your editorials for the purposes of conquering or using or misusing humanity, and then using the holy books as a cover or justification for the suffering that they themselves, the priests, have caused on the people, and then using the lower self of themselves to actually rape the people, and then using the mystical devil as a tool to keep the people subdued, and also keep paying the priesthood in the guise that they're actually paying or giving tithing to God, if you get the point, when actually they themselves have claimed themselves as God, which is demonstrated in the book of Thessalonians 1 and 2. But that's in perspective to even present part of what we're looking at tonight. Now, remember when the Pope Francis did the motu proprio, and many of you who have been, sharing here with us at the House of Reawakening Minds for the years, every once in a while you hear us mention the motu proprio, but that's to put the people in perspective. But I know that a lot of people, particularly because we have, thousands of people that listen to us from around the world, and some of them try to get to you, some can't, communicate with you. However, as we're traveling, sometimes, people will recognize us and ask a lot of questions that can't be asked, in like, say, for instance, in a 2-hour venue. So I'm going to share the apostolic letter issued motu proprio by Pope Francis of the Supreme Pontiff with people, because they hear us mention it. So when we're saying certain things, we know that a lot of you have, those of you who have studied, and those of you who are scholars, and many of you who are adepts already have this information. But we're sharing this with some of the people and some of the listeners who don't have this information, so they'll know what we're referencing, all right? So keep in mind that the United States and all the corporate agencies and all of the 3-letter agencies and the crown all belong to the Crown Vatican Crown Empire. Are we clear? That's all over the world. Are we clear? And so when they're talking Trinity, they're really talking Vatican, City of London, Washington, D.C. They're all one and the same. The deception among the people, and of course this message is to our people in general who are constantly abused by them, and particularly anyone who tries to tell any truth whatsoever will be attacked, will be attacked and censored.
And so that's a good, there's a question here that someone wanted to know whether or not you had seen Ye's interview and what you thought of it. And I'm trying to be respectful. I'm saying what he wanted to be called, what he's now calling himself. Yeah. And we've had multiple discussions.
Yeah. Well, that's a motu proprio is actually Pope Francis telling them to cease these activities. Because
you mean for what he said about and how the responses come from as a result of him speaking his truth on drink camps?
These are crown operatives that are in breach. Who? That we talked about. So the crown so we keep in mind, like when many of you hear them say the crown a lot of people's mind immediately goes to Buckingham Palace, the Queen of England, etc. Although she's part of the network or the matriarchy, because she stands as a substitute for the great Moabites who are under the Inquisition operations they overthrow. So the great Moabites, so you'll look at Ruth, this is why they have in all of the different chapters, the Masonic chapters or the Eastern Star chapters or the Daughters of Isis chapters, they'll emphasize Ruth the Moabitess, and they'll use our star, the pentagram star of man, and they'll put it in reverse or upside down. That's why they'll take that and then they'll put, you'll see Ruth, Esther, etc. around on that star in Eastern Star as a symbol in the Masonic orders. Well, Ruth the Moabitess is Yahshua's great grandmother. Yahshua is the one they call Jesus. She's Moabite and he's Moabite. In modern terms, you would call them Moors or Al-Moroccans, descendants of the ancient Moabites. Al-Moroccan is a dialectical corruption by virtue of American. So Americans are actually Moabites. But then those are your Aboriginal people. This is why the hybrids or the hybrids who claim to be us, who are not us, as of John 8:44, have been claiming to be Americans and using the sovereign authority of the ancient Moabites to conquer the world under the Inquisition operations of the Unum Sanctum and Doctrine of Discovery. Now, keep in mind the motu proprio is declared by the Pope of Rome for this decease. So this is why they will use say Kanye, that they say Kanye he's yea. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. So yea walks through the valley of the shadow of death, fears no evil, and speaks truth to the power, which is why they're calling him crazy, because he's not acting like a nigger. And a nigger is a tag put on the Asiatics as property under Constantine. So the Negro Acts, the Black Codes of 1620, adopted in all the corporate states as the Christian Black Codes of 1724. Do the research. Christian Black Codes 1724 adopted in all the states of the corporation. And this is what our people, out of lack of information, have been calling under the phenotype mind control system set forth by Blumenbach and Carlos Linnaeus as the guise of the phenotype of racism. And so our people are calling actually Inquisition operations of genocide as racism and prejudice, which are designed diversions. Those are designed diversions, meaning like as the people are suffering under the operations of Unum Sanctum and the Doctrine of Discovery, they're trained under the animal husbandry of the General Education Board of 1902 to say that they're suffering from racism and prejudice. That's mind control, MK Ultra mind control operations, and it's absolutely not what's going on. They're suffering from Inquisition operations under colonial powers of the Trinity city-state sovereigns of the Crusades of the Popes of Rome, i.e. against the Moabites, those who have hair like lamb's wool, skin like burnished brass. And one of their rituals of sacrifice has always been to lynch and hang them. This is why they hung Yahshua on a tree. And they say they hung him on a cross. And they continue that practice even to this day. And so when it comes to Kanye, they're doing what you will call public character lynching. He's telling absolute truth. And that's, I'm not defending him. I'm just telling you what's up. Because he stopped submitting to the mind control systems and started speaking things relative to the interests of the people at large, not just to his own self. And that is counter to the Christian Black codes. It is counter to the King Alfred operations, military operations under the United States Corporation Company, and is contrary to the Rex 84 plan and the dissolution of families, etc., and is contrary to the genocide operations of Margaret Sanger, adopted in all the corporate entities and all your hospital systems, which is also registered in your Christian Black codes. I think it's at Article 6. So those of you who have the Christian Black codes, look at Article 6 and you'll see where the hospital and the corporate state operate together, determining the negative condition of the children. So they don't want you to look at that. They want you to argue racism and prejudice, and then they put out people from among your own who are usually 32 and 33 degree Masons, and they send them around, marching around the place as so-called civil rights leaders to promote the 14th Amendment, etc., which actually is an amendment for the living dead. And this is why the 14th Amendment is called the straw man, or the man of straw, which is the nom de guerre or the brand system. So Kanye is doing things that are counter to all of this. Therefore, they're doing everything they can to both slander him, to tell people not to associate with him, and to shut him down. Those are unum sanctum operations. It's not racism, it's unum sanctum operations.
So
it's hegemony operations. Get it very clear what's going on. People, particularly the Asiatics of America, the Aboriginal people, because they've been trained to always argue the phenotype system of Carlos Linnaeus as racism, etc., they keep forgetting that they're suffering from colonial unum sanctum operations. They forget that these people who are abusing them are alien, hybrid European colonists. They're not Americans. In another way, you might look at it, the book of John 8:44. They're claiming to be Jews and they're not Jews. That's simple. And they're doing the demon operations, or what you would call the synagogue of Satan, is in full operation. Directed from Fleet Street, England. All of the human trafficking venues that the people have been calling courts operating at Canada and North America, none of them are Article 3 courts, not one. None of them are Article 3 courts.
So how does one who is invited to come to those de facto courts, or threatened, okay, to come into the court,
or summoned to the throne of Rome for soul and body?
Yeah, how do they circumvent that?
Article 3 court establishes your legitimate courts, ambassadors, diplomats, and consuls for the diversity of the nations of the planet, etc. It is a consular court venue called Article 3. All of the Asiatics, or the people of the land, the Aboriginals, in their communications with the operative foreigners, is consular venue. Go read Article 3, Section 2 of the Constitution for the United States. So now you're talking the legitimate political venue for controversies to be addressed. That is a consular venue. That's called the venue of diversity. And that operates all around the world. It is not respected or operative because in 54 or 56, Dwight D. Eisenhower shut down or relinquished jurisdiction at Morocco and shut down your consular courts in order to promote their 14th Amendment operatives among the Asiatics or the Aboriginal people of the land. That's why your so-called civil rights movement became in full force around 54, 55, 56, operating at North America. So when you know these things, you put things in perspective. You see them different. However, you also come out of the smoke screen.
But then that means that we need more Article 3 courts.
But it must be activated by the people.
Yeah,
because the people are this. Now let's look at history too. You notice, like as an example, after they bombed the wealthiest bank area at North America and stole the gold and the jewels, and then burned it and fed many of the people that they murdered to pigs. That's a fact. Yes, they did. And most people don't talk about that side of Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
No one talks about that was the wealthiest bank at North America, and that they murdered the people, bombed them literally,
right,
and fed the carcasses with bulldozers to the pigs. That's a fact. No one wants to talk about that. They just talk about, oh, they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma, and they call it Black Wall Street.
Right.
And then they took the wealth and activated their so-called Wall Street at Empire State and been selling the people through marriage certificates, birth certificates, car registries, house registries from 55 Water Street to fund their operations. The same way they set up the U.S. Treasury bonds in 1862 after they murdered Lincoln to fund their United States Corporation Company. Then 1871, February the 2nd, they came out of the closet with what they call the Organic Act of Congress. And that's where you get your U.S. democracy platform and your bond system that has been funding them ever since, with their private crown operations of the corporation being promoted among the ignorant as a country. That's the deception. So now let's look at the motu proprio. As we've told you over the years, that as the world became more and more cognate, as they came together and they would stop trading with the U.S. corporation, because the people here, particularly the Aboriginal people, have been so neutered and compromised, there was very few people that would stand up and speak the truth. And so from an organization point of view, the most direct counter move to the operations of the Unum Sanctum was the Moorish Divine and National Movement set for 1913 by Noble Drew Ali. It was countered with their meeting on Jekyll Island, 1913. This is where Woodrow Wilson sold the corporation that went bankrupt again to the Circle Church in Chancery, what they had left. And they reconstructed again another United States Corporation company, which later went bankrupt again in 1928, which later went bankrupt again in 2013. And this is where Pope Francis does the motu proprio that you hear us mentioning. So a lot of times when we're mentioning it, we're bringing you to a concept of mind of some of these things that we're trusting that you already have this as a background in your knowledge so that you could comprehend the politics that are taking place in front of your face.
Why do you think we haven't done anything to date to bring our, the Moorish community together to do for ourselves what others seem to be doing against us?
Let's back up. Remember, 11 years ago at the House of Reawakening Minds, and I did a couple of classes, and every once in a while I bring it up. And I would remind people to do the research in the FBI papers, some of them which I shared, some of them which have been lost over years, but some of them had been put on the internet, some have been taken down. And it's about 36 files that they've displayed with the infiltration into the Moorish movement. That answers your question. It's also referred to by Drew Ali himself as the Great Sellout. Also, 1929, before they assassinated him, he wrote a letter, an issue around to the people. And that letter, I published it in the Al Moroccan Star in 2001, which made me unpopular with a lot of the so-called grand governors of the Moorish Science Temple of America who didn't want that information out. So when you see a lot of the division, you got to recognize that just like all the other orders under COINTELPRO operations that have been reinforced and spearheaded, particularly since the Johnson administration, after they murdered Kennedy, COINTELPRO operations, which is part of their mission of the infiltration. Now, that's why you see, that's your answer to the question that you just asked. Why do you see the division? Why do you see some Moors, like as an example from the Moorish Honor Society, or the Moorish the Order of the Round Table, or the Order of the Great Seal, teaching civics and law and history, and then you have some of these same people go to the Moorish Science Temple of America, and they'll tell the people that we don't deal with that stuff and run them out, even though Noble Drew Ali said enforce the Constitution. And you'll see them attack anyone who comes around them talking about constitutional enforcement. That answers your question. And for those who want more details, although they've blocked out a lot of the information, do the research on FBI infiltrates Moorish Science Temple of America. And then look at the documents, and a lot of the documents are redacted, but it's very clear that most of the leadership has been compromised. That answers that question, Dr. J.
Whoa, wow, okay.
Now, again, let's read motu proprio of 20, because remember, the United States Corporation went bankrupt again in 2013. And by this time, keep in mind, even though it hasn't been published in the mainstream press, particularly at North America and Canada, that around the rest of the world had been organizing or coming together among themselves to stop trading in U.S. Treasury bonds, which is now culminated in your trade wars that you're seeing take place right now. Remember, 7 or 8 years ago, I started telling people at the house that you're going to have a feedback loop.
Mm-hmm.
What we're experiencing now is that feedback loop, which means that they're not trading or accepting the private commercial paper of the Jesuits, which is known as the US dollar, in trade anymore. They're going back to the Coptic rule of order of trade international, which means gold and silver. So if the instruments that are used by the nation states in agreement is not harmonic with nature law, gold, silver, copper, etc., according to the customs of the ancient ones, it will not be accepted. So now what you're having is that feedback loop. Are we clear? So now the hybrid Europeans under the United States Corporation Company and their franchise corporate state of pseudo governors, etc., are trying to liquidate people's estates. And this is why you see so many people on the street now. They're calling in their sharecropping agreements. And so people who thought they owned property and business, everything, find themselves on the street. Whether you're in Los Angeles, New York, Philadelphia, Denver, etc., all your major cities that have been controlled by demo operatives of the Whiggamore parties, etc., of the Cotton Whigs, known as the Democratic Party, and the Rhino Republican parties, known as the Conscience Whigs, after their convention of 1854, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Knights of Columbus, Ku Klux Klan oath, they're now on the streets. And they think that they're finding these drugs conveniently by the curb, not knowing they're brought in by three-letter agencies belonging to the Vatican. And because the world is turning on them now, the Pope has spoken. This is the motu proprio 2013, you all. Apostolic letter issued motu proprio, that means by the hand, by his own hand, of the Supreme Pontiff Francis on the jurisdiction of judicial authorities of Vatican City State in criminal matters. In our times, the common good is increasingly threatened by transnational organized crime, the improper use of the markets and of the economy, as well as by terrorism. It is therefore necessary for the international community to adopt adequate legal instruments to prevent and counter criminal activities by promoting international judicial cooperation on criminal matters. In ratifying numerous international conventions in these areas and acting also on behalf of Vatican City State, the Holy See has constantly maintained that such agreements are effective means to prevent criminal activities that threaten human dignity, the common good, and peace, with a view to renewing the Apostolic See's commitment to cooperate to these ends. By means of this apostolic letter issued motu proprio, I establish that the competent judicial authorities of Vatican City State shall also exercise penal jurisdiction over A, crimes committed against the security, the fundamental interest, or the patrimony of the Holy See. B, crimes referred to in Vatican City State Law number 8 of July 2013, containing supplementary norms on criminal law matters. In Vatican City State Law number 9 of July 2013 of 11 July 2013, containing amendments to the Criminal Code and the Criminal Procedure Order. When such crimes are committed by the persons referred to in paragraph 3 below in the exercise of their functions. C, any other crime whose prosecution is required by an international agreement ratified by the Holy See, if the perpetrator is physically present in the territory of Vatican City State and has not been extradited. 2, the crimes referred to in paragraph 1 are to be judged pursuant to the criminal law in force in Vatican City State at the time of their commission, without prejudice to the general principles of the legal system on the temporal application of criminal laws. 3, for the purposes of Vatican criminal law, the following persons are deemed, quote unquote, public officials. A, members, officials, and personnel of the various organs of the Roman Curia and of the institutions connected to it. Keep that in mind. That's very important. Pay attention to that. I repeat that section. For the purposes of Vatican criminal law, the following persons are deemed public officials, quote unquote. A, members, officials, and personnel of the various organs of the quote unquote Roman Curia and of the institutions connected to it. B. Papal legates and diplomatic personnel of the Holy See. C. Those persons who served as representatives, managers, or directors, as well as persons who even de facto manage or exercise control over the entities directed dependent on the Holy See and listed in the registry of canonical judicial persons kept by the government of Vatican City State. D. Any other person holding an administrative or judicial mandate in the Holy See, permanent or temporary, paid or unpaid, irrespective of that person's seniority. 4. The jurisdiction referred to in paragraph 1 comprises also the administrative liability of the judicial persons arising from crimes as regulated by Vatican City State laws. 5. When the same matters are prosecuted in other states, the provisions in force in Vatican City State on concurrent jurisdiction shall apply. 6. The content of Article 23 of Law Number 59 of 21 November 1987, which approves the judicial order of Vatican City State, remains in force. This I decide and establish anything to the contrary notwithstanding. I establish that this apostolic letter issued motu proprio will be promulgated by its publication in L'Ouverture Romano, entering into force on 1 September 2013, given in Rome at the Apostolic Palace on 11 July 2013, the first of my pontificate, Franciscus Convention, etc. That ends the apostolic letter. Now, when we're talking, and you all who have been sharing time with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, when you hear me bringing up the motu proprio, that is to put in context that most of you have been studying, and most of you are historians, and all of you who are Masons or Eastern Stars or Knights Templars or Knights of Columbus or Dragons of the Ku Klux Klan or members of any of the curates know that all of the members of all of your corporate heads in the United States, that includes Amazon, Sears, and any other corporate heads, etc., are members of the Roman Curia. All the congressmen and senators are members of the Roman Curia. Anyone that has any corporation registered to the United States Corporation Company are by de facto operative members of the Roman Curia and come under the rule of Vatican City State. That's a fact. That's what this is about. This is why, Dr. G, when a lot of people are asking us about different jurisdictional issues or legal issues, and we always tell them, make sure you read the motu proprio, and I tell them to read the civil orders, that letter from Pope Francis to Barack H. Obama, so that they can put things in perspective. See, because if people don't know or are not aware that the United States is not a country, it's a private corporation occupying North America, exercising judicial or civil authority on the land, separate from the land. The concepts are constantly wrong because the people have been trained that it's the country. This is why they keep going to them for remedy and not getting it. Then they pack the jails with our people, and we keep calling it racism. That's unum sanctum operations. That's supposed to have ceased.
Why haven't they?
This is why now you see why I keep saying they breach, and a lot of people don't know what I'm talking about because they don't have a background. So we're sharing a little bit of background with the people and the listeners so that your concepts can be corrected. Because if you're not aware of this, your concepts will be guided by the misinformation that's presented in the mainstream news. Oh, you see what I'm saying, Dr. G?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you put this in perspective, now you understand why the civil orders were issued the very next year, 2014, to Barack H. Obama. You see the perspective? And keep in mind, the only reason why the Pope did this is because they got warrants for him out all around the world, and it was only a matter of time that they started getting them. This is why, did you notice how I think it was just a few months back where they talked about a car or something that ran into the back of the Vatican and made this hole and it was smoking? Kind of. No. The deal of it is that's a military op. That's a whole nother subject that y'all need to look into. And understand that all the gold that they've been robbing from nations for these last few centuries was actually taken out of the Vatican, and it took over 600 planes to carry the gold. And so they've been keeping the people locked down with these so-called bio problems that are happening right now. That's to keep the people unconscious of what's going on another scale. Now, also, for people who have been sharing with us, keep in mind and write this down because we'll go through a couple of the articles, but we're not going to go through all of the articles. Look up the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. I repeat, Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, entry into force 12 January 1951 in accordance with Article 3. The contracting powers or the contracting parties, having considered the declaration made by the General Assembly of the United Nations in its Resolution 96, Section 1, dated 11 December 1946, that genocide is a crime under international law, contrary to the spirit and aims of the United Nations and condemned by the civilized world. Recognizing that at all periods of history, genocide has inflicted great losses on humanity, and being convinced that in order to liberate mankind from such an odious scourge, international cooperation is required. Hereby agree and hereafter provided. And I'll read a few articles to you. Article 1. The contracting parties confirm that genocide, whether committed in time of peace or in time of war, is a crime under international law, which they undertake to prevent and to punish. Article 2. In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, an ethnical, a racial, or a religious group. As such, A, killing members of the group. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group. C, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. E, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Now, I want to remind you that what appeared as ordinary just censorship, that the censoring of Ye, as you've been seeing recently, is an act of genocide under international law, to be heard in Article 3 courts. This is why they closed them down, Doc.
How do they have the right to close down something that didn't belong to them?
Of course. Now you understand the motu proprio. Because the world is turning on them. That's why the Pope did the motu proprio. And this is why he did.
What does it profit him to try to correct what he was a part of creating?
It's, remember,
or his organization.
Look, we got to remember, put it in perspective.
I'm trying.
We're looking currently. This is the whole colonial operation. This is why they had the motu proprio. Remember when the Pope called all the so-called civic leaders and the religious leaders around, they came kissing the Pope's hand, and they said that they promised to end the doctrine of discovery when the masses thought that ended in the 1800s. We see this whole civil rights thing is a cover-up for doctrine of discovery operations. It's a diversion. The straw man issue is a diversion. The UCCs is a diversion. The selling of the paperwork is a diversion. It can't be sold. The whole game that's been played on the people currently are all diversions from what has really been going on. Which is why we're having this conversation.
I get it. I get part of it, but the part, and I think I'm going to ask you this question since 2013 or whatever. Why, if I just hypothetically, if I create a scenario that enslaves the minds, the finances, the movement, or so forth of the world,
that's called genocide.
Yeah. Why would I, even if I'm just a representative of me? Why would I want to tell somebody, stop what you're doing? We've been doing. If I was profiting from it, which they have, what would it be the motivation of the Pope to tell everybody stop? And if he had that power, let me finish. Hold up. Sure. If he had such power, why didn't they stopped when he said if he really did say that? Because your question is, did he?
Now, motivation. What's the motivation for them to stop?
I would like to know.
Now, years ago, and in recent conversations, I would bring up to you in response to questions along that line. People need to pay attention. Why did the so-called BRICS order come about? What was the motivation? Because what hasn't been known to the masses or the public is that the Vatican has been approached with military threat, which is why I think y'all should stop this now, because the world is now turning on us. So
they're trying to get ahead of what's coming.
They're getting ahead of the curve. It's not moral. It's because they're now under arrest. That bishops around the world are being arrested. It's just not in the public newspaper. People don't know, like they say, they're remodeling Buckingham Palace.
Can take it over.
Because they haven't seen any activity. They forgot BRICS. Now you understand why every time something happens, they say, Russians did it.
Mm-hmm.
China did it. It's because they have all come together to dismantle unum sanctum operations on the planet, including they went down into hell and took the gold back. Hell are the exchequer chambers we've been telling. Those are the tunnel systems around the world. That's hell. That's the exchequer chamber beneath the church. People. That's a whole nother.
I just see the metaphysical piece of beneath the church because they have been the ones.
It's always see. Every once in a while, even when we had our last conversation, I ended it with to remind the people what hell really is. And then I went to the law book and I read it out.
Right.
But people need to understand that's the tunnel system. But it's bigger than the people think it is.
Oh, a lot more.
It's all around the world. As an example, the truth of the matter is, these people that you've been calling wrongfully, your so-called representatives, have been going in the temple under your major large churches and under the palace, the White House, and going to Portugal. I think it takes, I apologize, no more than a couple hours.
Through a tunnel system.
Through tunnel system. Ancient technology, not modern technology. Ancient technology that they've been hiding from the public. They have enough food in hell to feed the world for 500 years. For themselves, uncontaminated.
Mm-hmm. I heard about provisions under there.
They have purified water systems. They're getting the electrical systems from the Earth's core itself. The Earth itself is a magnetic field.
I know that.
Electricity don't cost anything. They've been robbing people for all of these years with both water bills and electric bills that they've simply been drawing off the earth. Now that's a fact. That's part of disclosure. People keep thinking disclosure, they're going to talk about spaceships and the bonners and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
No, it's really ancient technology that's actually over 1 million years old, not a couple of thousand. And that they have literally, the priesthood, which includes the politicians, has literally held humanity in slavery. It wasn't just a couple of hybrid Europeans that took over the Bonnevilles here at North America, and they start calling them plantations. All your corporate things are plantations. That's why all of the places where they do big business, they call them plants.
Yes. Okay.
They're plantations. And all are governed by the Christian black codes. The problem, now back to the why.
Mm-hmm.
And the why is always coming from the moral thought, the ethical thought. And this is why it's difficult for people to accept that these people that they thought were government are that thoroughly evil. They just can't wrap their head around it. This is why the world has to come in. We have to get outsiders or some travelers, or what you call walk-ins, as well as the heads of other nation states to come together to actually solve this demon problem here at Midgard Earth. The people are that buried.
I want to say it's more the people here on, here, because we always look out in a tunnel vision. Speaking of tunnels,
well, that's the animal husbandry training.
We look out and we say, "Oh, they're occupying Panama, and they occupied this, and they occupied that, and they're taking over the
and they went in Ukraine, and they went into Palestine,
and then nobody said, but they're occupying here, and they have
been. They did the Balfour
right, but we don't see our own selves as being
because
under
we
occupation.
Were the first to fall.
So we don't see it. We become
because we were the.
What's that thing they call? We got Stockholm syndrome.
Well, no, because remember our syndrome was before Stockholm.
Well, we got
something. No. We here at the North have suffered the military operations known as Christopher Columbus before the so-called Stockholm. This is why we're the most sleep. Let's look at this. Right? Isn't it has been customary in these contemporary times for our so-called veterans from the Aboriginal people who fought in many of the wars to march around and still talk about their seeking recognition or proper acknowledgement for their contributions to the world. For the contributions to the quote unquote country, and yet they're still suffering. They didn't know that they were working for the corporation. They thought they were working for the country. That's why they're still mistreated, because they're stock. They're looking at themselves as citizens of the country. They're stock of the corporation and expendable. When you know that, your concepts change about what you do, about what you choose to do. They think their vote counts. Their vote is a sanction for the world global trust that holds all of their estate.
It's like a proxy.
The congressional
it's sort of like proxy, then they make a decision.
The congressional college votes.
That's what I'm saying.
Don't vote. They're all members of the Roman Curia.
I may have been Dane Calloway, because I want to give credit. He said voting is like a survey.
It's a sanctioning.
Yeah, because they actually, the electoral college.
I'm making the connection. The global estate trust is what is controlled by the Vatican, and it has the bonds on all the humans. The issuance of the instruments from Wall Street, coming from 55 Water Street, are all of the instrumentalities, the bonds, treasury bonds, etc., that are issued on these people who keep thinking that they're citizens of the country. They're stock of the corporation. When you know this, you stop arguing the morality of it all, because it indicates naivety. However, politicians always play the game because they know the masses don't know what we're saying right now. This is why they're trying to shut Ye up, because Ye found out. And Ye speak up. And a lot of the other people, this is why a lot of people, you'll see a good brother, and I'm not knocking them. They already know who one of them is. Who you talk about step and fetch it, and
he just lost.
The negative concept of Uncle Tom, and they need to have a portrait made with a bunch of cheeks around him, pale cheeks with straws in them, to demonstrate his humility and apologize to his master of the Khazarians, who are claiming to be somebody that they're not. John 8:44 in the Bible, that these same priests who got a 501c3 skull and bones agreement have been promoting, pretending that they don't know what that 501c3 agreement is against their own people. And they don't like people like Ye, who's speaking openly and trying to do something positive, inspirationally for the people. And remember this, because that's why I went into the prevention and punishment of genocide, because people don't know that it's genocide. They think that genocide is only the physical killing. Any harm and the suppression of the people, etc., that injures in any form, genocide. So they're committing genocide
to us.
They've been doing it, and our people have been ignorantly calling it racism. It's genocide. That's not opinion, that's fact. That's international law. And what do we keep on doing? Sitting around marching, playing Civil Rights 14th Amendment, when we should be enforcing international law under Article 3, Section 2, diversity of consular venue, that Eisenhower shut down in 1854. And they've been promoting their 14th Amendment marching guys since 1955, and the people think that's the proper venue. And they've been paying Khazarian mafia members of the Roman Curia to do law cases for them in these human trafficking venues of the corporate states, which are franchisees of the Roman Curia of the Bar Association, run from Fleet Street, England, which I've been telling you over and over and over and over and over again. And yet you see these people with a whole bunch of titles calling themselves grand this and grand that, knowing they were supposed to enforce Article 3 of that Constitution, like Noble Drew Ali said in the Divine Warning by the Prophet for the Nations, directly, and tell people that Drew Ali didn't teach civics, and they got away with it. And then people say, why don't the Moors come together? And why don't the different groups? And they got to do, and how come they don't? Now you know. It's COINTELPRO operations. It's not a secret. It's that the people don't read. And they've been following people who are traitors and operating in a state of sedition and misprision. So they've been going to the very people who are actually committing the genocide and voting for them for more activity, which they've been giving them in spades.
I want to put this quote, this comment up, because this brother's been putting quite a few. I believe I'm not sure if he's in Haiti or what, but he says, Moors in America, I love you, but we need you to step up as the great Moors that you are. You have the best chance to, trust me, you have a whole empire of real warriors that are ready to die all over Maghreb.
Didn't Drew Ali say, I want brave men and women? Didn't he say that?
Yeah.
Over 120
they've got us in a place where, I'm back. I always bring up the Dark Crystal, that, that there are so many more of us than it is of them that are, and they're sucking our essence.
Now look at the world is stepping up. The world is stepping up now. These principles are being carried out by nations of the world now. The U.S. corporation operatives of the Vatican and of Buckingham Palace and of Washington, D.C. are being isolated. Haven't you been paying attention, y'all? What did Drew Ali say? What? Take your places among the affairs of men. And I'm so glad these women are ready.
Yes, we are.
To start getting something done.
We're going to run that again. We are. Thank you for bringing that up.
Because you can see, because let's look at the action, not just what people say. Name the institution or these little club or these little so-called organizations that haven't been compromised. Every last one of them compromised. And it doesn't mean that people who are a part of them aren't good people. But the leadership is compromised. Recognize it. Step up. Women raising sons, breastfeeding them, stretching their womb, bringing them here for the hybrids to send out to war to kill and to sacrifice. Giving birth to children to become part of the so-called burger supply for the conglomerates that they've been feeding back to. You all go look at World Court suits and start looking at suits that they're not publishing in your mainstream news where they've been feeding your babies back to you. And stop acting like you don't know that. That's genocide. So the question before us is the title of our conversation, Dr. D.
Was that, did the Pope God really end the Circle Church and Chancery's privateering? Did he?
And then after they breached the motu proprio, then he sent that letter directly to Barack H. Obama, didn't he?
That's true.
And then it was said in the international court that letter was supposed to be distributed amongst these Aboriginal people at all costs. How come the House of Reawakening Mind is one of the only venues in the public domain that's been talking about the civil orders from Pope Francis to Obama? Have you been hearing any of these so-called liberating or caring for our community so-called bloggers and YouTube gurus distributing that information? You see a lot of them trying to knock the House of Reawakening Minds, making videos, haven't you? The same way they're trying to shut Ye down. Well, guess what? They can try all they want to. It's over for them. We're just having this question and answer venue to what? Wake up the sleepers. Like I said, because everything that we've been talking now, we've been saying for years. Redundantly. But the pain is on the people now, so they're listening.
Definitely. Folks' attention,
not because we weren't talking.
The attention has been gotten, especially from the economic standpoint. That's like biting folk right in the butt.
Because that's lifeblood. That's lifeblood. Yeah. See, the economics ain't that Federal Reserve notes. It's their lifeblood. It's live or die. And they, you know how you say they smell it, even though they ain't openly acknowledging. See, their very life is under threat now. People who, say, 3 years ago were secure with a nice car and a nice home, some of them are in tents. In Los Angeles, Denver, New York, Philadelphia, all over. Now, things we've been saying for 50 years now are relevant, aren't they? And you see people wanting what you call 2-hour conversations to cure. And it ain't going to happen like that. They must become what they know. They must become active. You can't afford to be passive anymore because they're openly genociding the people. They're blunt. See, the deal of it is that the people thought that there was a separation of church and state. The church owned the corporate state. Now, I'm going to remind you all, and notice, Dr. G, how redundant this stuff is, right? Because we talk all the time, but nothing that we're saying now, basically, except a few things, are new, different from what we've been saying. It's just that as of late, because people are catching hell, that people are starting to really listen. But then they want to cure when they haven't been a part of it. It hasn't been in their heart. You can't say, Lord, 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 when your heart's far removed. Now you got the Lords of London, and then you got the Lord of Self, called the higher self. Which one do you choose? The deal of it is everybody's now being forced to make a real choice for real. And it's uncomfortable because every time they turn, they're finding that they can't ignore this anymore. They can try, and every time they try, the gas that was $3 is now $4. Then the gas that was $4 is now $5. Then the gas that was $5 now $6. And in California, some parts of the West is $7.
And they're literally saying that, for instance, we don't want to raise it up too high before the midterm because we want you all to think that, you know, we kept it down. Our intent is to raise it, but we want you to vote for us, and which we should not. But vote for us first after the midterm, and then, you know, we can hike the prices. We can do this and the third. And folks, I don't know if they don't hear these because I don't look at a lot of mainstream. But when you do hear certain things, your ears have to perk up about what it is that they're saying.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's something that you need to take heed of with your third eye, with your first eye, so to speak. You need to be able to use it, discern it at a spiritual level,
Yes.
at a higher level than just what they're saying. Like, well, that's what they're saying, but this is what it means. And some folks don't take the time to do that type of analysis.
Now, as we were talking earlier, for support, I'm not going to read because we've done this, how many times? The civil orders. I'm going to read the last few paragraphs of the civil orders from Pope Francis to his employee, Barack H. Obama, who was the last CEO for the corporation that went into bankruptcy. This is, how many people, you've seen many of our people made comments when Obama did that roast and he took the mic and he dropped the mic. Mm-hmm. And that was a signal that it was over, and people still don't get it. These are the last paragraphs to the letter from Pope Francis to Barack H. Obama, 2014. Remember the motu proprio, 2013, right? Mm-hmm. Breach, breach, breach. We've been telling the people that breached. Now, as far as the people that are put in positions in all these so-called civic organizations and so-called religious organizations who were given this information and instructed to dispense this information to the people at all costs.
And then did he not come to here and ride around?
Yes, he did.
Symbolically in a fiat.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Now, so let's read the letter. This is Pope Francis sends Obama a powerful letter via attorney, July the 4th, 2014, known as civil orders. Now let's read. I'm going to read the first paragraph, you all. What's that time? First.
We got like 15 minutes.
All right, first paragraph, so we won't take up too much time. And the last few paragraphs, remember this is 2014. This is a response to the motu proprio of 2013, which we just read earlier. Are we clear? Civil orders issued to all members of the domestic police forces, U.S. Marshal Service, the Provost Marshal, members of the American Bar Association, and the American Armed Forces Services. These organic American states of the Union, known as the United States of America, major, exercising plenary civil power upon the land, hereby appoint General Carter F. Ham to lead and command the Grand Army of the Republic, GAR, and its successors under the guidance of the Joint Chiefs of Staff with their full support. That first paragraph lets you know that all of these commercial operatives claiming to be officers of any type have been put on notice directly. So the things we've discussed tonight, they were issued directly from the Pope of Rome, who's their boss. So any of these people or members who claim that they didn't know this information or that they disagree with Taji guy are lying. Now, let's read a mid-paragraph, and this is for all the people who've been selling paperwork. Selling. We ain't talking about the paperwork itself. We're talking about selling of it. No executive order or otherwise issued by Barack H. Obama pretending authority on the land of the American states while operating as quote unquote president of the United States Corporation, nor as president of the United States of America minor, are owed any performance by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Ham, or any ordinary. All plainly stated grants of contractual authority evident in the Constitution for the United States of America, small u, remain in place subject to good faith and performance of the accompanying obligations and treaties. Just in that paragraph, now you understand what Lamont, Consul General, was saying. That's international. And they're obligated. Now, let me read the last paragraphs. Inasmuch as the corporate officers operating the United States of America Incorporated and the United States, all capital letters, have contrived under conditions of fraud and semantic deceit to revenue the estates of the American states and living American state citizens to the foreign jurisdiction of the United States of America minor, they are found guilty of capital crimes, including acts of fraud and treason committed between 1933 and 1945, and are condemned posthumously insomuch as elected officials operating the United States of America minor have similarly committed war crimes against the American states and their peaceful inhabitants during the same time period. They stand condemned posthumously. Are we clear? Now I'm going to read the last two paragraphs. I'm going to read one more important paragraph, and then I'm going to read the last two paragraphs. These are the last three paragraphs. All legal fiction entities, however constructed or structured, and named after the American states and American state citizens, are returned to them and their control, free and clear of any debt, promise, encumbrance, or obligation alleged against them as a result of false claims made in their behalf by officers of the United States of America Incorporated and the United States Incorporated, all capital letters, or by any foreign officials operating the United States of America minor or the United Nations city-state, falsely claiming to represent them or to have jurisdiction over them. We note the current circumstance is in part the result of criminal acts engaged in 150 years ago, which resulted in the commercial enslavement of African Americans who were summarily claimed as chattels back in U.S. government debt in wake of the Civil War. Despite every act of abolition and declaration of prohibition against peonage and slavery, it has been the policy of the U.S. government to enslave its citizens and to operate as a rogue state among the nations of the world. And instead of freeing African Americans, the sum total result of the Civil War was to vastly expand public sector ownership of slaves, giving rise to the outrageous and improper claims that have been made against the American states and the American state citizens that we are dealing with today. It is uniquely fitting that the Grand Army of the Republic is recalled to settle this circumstance in favor of the people. Attachments, civil orders, Anna Maria Wilhelmina, Hanna Sophia Ritzinger von Ritzenstein von Letlow Verbeck, private attorney, in service to His Holiness Pope Francis. Documents related. The United States is not a country. It is a corporation. Hidden Vatican Crown Empire. Close. That's the backup to the motu proprio because of the consistent breaches of the governors of the corporate states. Now you understand why they have open borders. Oh, now you're looking at the politics a little different, aren't you? There's more going on than people have been told in mainstream news. That's why we're having this conversation. And so the question is asked to the public, to the people, are you paying attention? And are these criminal acts continue to go on? Don't be arguing racism with no one. You're dealing with the convention on the prevention and punishment of genocide. All your conversations should be about genocide. And so everybody should be standing up because they're trying to commit genocide against Ye by shutting him up. That's genocide. People didn't know that's genocide.
And we know that he probably had some MKs and some Bs and Ds and stuff, especially with his associations. But it seems like we talked about it prior to going live.
Even what they did to him in the hospital is genocide.
But what we just talked about prior to going live was awakening in the dream.
Yes.
You know, some of us we are all, you know, in a dream reality, so to speak. But some of us are awakening in the dream, in the midst of whatever's going on. Some of us going, wait a minute. And we're seeing things for how they really are. And so for him to come out and begin to say the things that he said, even if he says some contrary and done some contrary things, you got to look past that and say, okay, well, what is he saying now that's relevant to what we are all experiencing?
And let's look at
and
this.
That's like eat the meat, spit out the bones.
We need to know what they're doing to Ye, they're doing to you.
Right.
What they're doing to Ye, they're doing to you, which is also why you're not seeing me on the screen.
Yeah, so we can't.
It's also why we was in, YouTube jail a month or so ago.
Yeah, we talked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
That's genocide, y'all. Look up the Convention on Genocide. That's what you all should be talking. Don't fall for that Carlos Linnell's phenotype mind control argument under the fiction of racism. You should be talking genocide.
Somebody said, why did they choose North America to set up shop? Remember, we were talking about this is the land in the biblical account. This is the land that was flowing with milk and honey. Get your head from over there.
That's why the land of flowers is called the Fountain of Youth.
Right. So that's
Florida.
We talked about this today. The land flowing with milk and honey is where we are over in this continent. Now,
keep in mind, remember what we said, Dr. G. Remember we're talking and I was mentioning that people's concepts when they're looking at reconstructed history, and you'll hear a lot of people, scholars, talk about them like the hybrids in John 8:44 with their Balfour Declaration, separating, trying to take Egypt from Africa, separating Egypt from Africa. Their concept is incorrect because they keep thinking the modern territorial lines limited on Kemet or Mexum on the east of what they call in Egypt. It's really North America, which is the separation, separating Egypt from Africa. That's why they did. That's why they set up the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
To enforce that in the minds of the people. That's why people don't know that technology is ancient. This is why they're doing things now, like for instance, like what are they doing with almost everything that we're doing? They're getting us to buy instruments to put AI in our house, not knowing that they're building AI against us.
And surveillance.
And it's more than what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the dark priesthood has been using AI as a tool. The problem that they have is that they haven't been able, as I comprehend, to my limited comprehension, that they haven't got past the 11th dimension. And this is where a battle is going on right now, with them trying to get us to be more cooperative, because they can't get past that point to take control of our souls. Although many of the people are selling themselves. Let me say this to you, and I just started paying attention because people have been bringing it up about Ye, and I listened to a couple things he said, but I'm seeing a lot of code that he's talking to. He's trying to warn people, and there's some more things that he probably will be saying in private that he's not saying publicly. He's trying to make them aware of the AI operations. They'll really shut them down there. In other words, he's expecting that the people should be warned enough that they should be inspired to start doing a little research on their own. And know that as you go along, you will be attacked. However, as we come together as one, their attacks will be less potent. They're only strong because the people are divided by their dogma systems. Just like when we had the conversation earlier today, and I was saying people should look up the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. Once they do, the people will leave the church in droves when they discover that they've been funding their own enslavement under Constantine for a couple of centuries, thinking they're worshiping Jesus. Now that's a fact. You don't need to convince them. All they got to do is do the research in the the Council of Nicaea 325 and the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed. And if they claim to be a part of that after that, you already know they're dark. By choice. But also, once they get that information, they can't say they weren't told, can they?
Nope, I cannot.
And a lot of people who have been indirectly trying to slander you because you came out of that paradigm, the point of it is they didn't know that you knew this. But if they knew that, they'd come out that paradigm too.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Absolutely. But,
thank you all for sharing this evening with us too.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We appreciate it. And even though the camera did not cooperate, so folks could not see you, I'm glad that I had the presence of mind to check to see if they could hear. And so that's more important, that they hear what it is you have to say. I'd like to thank you all 1,100 and plus that are on this live. We appreciate you. We appreciate your tuning in and chiming in the comment section. And we also would like to encourage you to become a sustaining supporter of our platform, House of Reawakening Minds. I know this banner here says, I think it says minimum monthly donation of $5, and I would like to make a correction and say a minimum monthly donation of $1 is good. If you all don't think that that's too little to send, but it's not, because we have 1,100 plus of you on here now. Can you imagine, Grand Sheik, if they all just send $1? We could do a lot. We're still doing work in the building, y'all. We're coming along. Again, I'm grateful for the team that came in at the end of September. No, was that August? I'm sorry. Yeah, they came in at the end of August, and they're looking to come back. We have some other things that we need. Grand Sheik, you're making some rattling noise now. We still live. We appreciate your support and those who came and helped with the work, but we still have work to do, and we also need to maintain it. But we want to open the building back up so that folks can come in for our at least. Sheik, stop making the noise. Y'all have to stop him. He is rattling papers, and we're still live. Stop it. Listen, we want to bring back at least once a month where we'll have the in-person. It will not necessarily be it won't be live stream, but then we can really talk to you all. So we want to get back to that place, but we have to, we need to maintain the property, and we need work still that needs to be done. So your support will absolutely help us. You see rolling at the bottom. You can support us via Cash App or via PayPal, whatever, $1.50. We know whatever you do, just do it from your heart, because you appreciate what the efforts that we're making. We appreciate each and every one of you all. And I do know that a lot of times we can't answer all of your questions on the live, but hopefully, if you have gotten the flash drive, the USB drive, we have a lot of material there, and we're looking forward to it. We call them Zoom sessions. They will not probably be Zoom sessions, because our Zoom will only have, I think, 100 of you all, limited to 100. So we're looking for another platform for that. But soon we'll be able to have some meetings. I don't know, Grand Sheik, where you can be really, be open, and I can be open, and we can say the things that we are prohibited by censorship from saying. So again, thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time. I think Grand Sheik is trying to get away and get to that spaghetti that with the vegan spaghetti, y'all. He left me. All right. Thank you all for supporting us. Until next time, this is Dr. G for House of Reawakening Minds. We out of here. I think we are.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.